Minasan, konnichiwa. Japanese with cello e yokoso. Hello everyone, welcome to this video where we will be talking about big don'ts in Japan. Alright, what are the things that you should definitely know before you go to Japan so you don't find yourself in an embarrassing situation. So big don't in Japan, number one is densha, basu de tsuwa suru. Okay, densha, basu de tsuwa suru. So this means to talk on the phone on public transportation. I wrote on a train and a bus, but basically any public transportation that you use in Japan, you should not talk on your phone, okay? Using your phone, for example, texting or being on social media, obviously is okay, but the problem here is when you are talking, okay? So tsuwa suru means to talk over the phone. So most likely we'll see signs like this one here that says mana modo no go kyōryoku o negai itashimasu, which basically is asking us to put our phones into silent mode, okay? So mana modo means silent mode. So your phone is not going to ring on the train. If you do get a call while you are on a train, a bus, you can answer, and say, hey, I'm on a train right now, can I call you back later? But again, you're not expected to start talking on your phone on a train, okay? The sign on the top says tsuwa kinshi. Kinshi means prohibited, right? Prohibit. So again, you shouldn't be talking on the phone. That's what the sign means. All right, Japan, number two. Chip wo watasu. Chip wo watasu. Chip wo watasu. This means to tip. So if you come from a culture like we have in North America where it's so common to tip, you might want to do it in Japan, right? However, it's not recommended because in Japan it's just not part of the culture. If you do give a tip to someone, most likely they will gonna come to you and say, I can receive this, please take it back. So you kind of just create an awkward situation to the server and yourself, Just my own experience here is when I was in university, I was working for this hotel restaurant. So we were serving people that were staying in a hotel in Kyoto. And I had a day that I got a tip that was like ichiman, like back then $100. And, so it was quite a lot of money, which I would be super happy to get it. But I remember my supervisor telling me, go after the guest and tell them that you cannot receive it, So I had to literally run after the guest and say, I'm sorry, I cannot receive this. It's just, not part of our, culture. And I felt super kind of sad to see that money going, But again, it's just such a big cultural difference. So if you do come from another country, and especially if you're working there and you're offered to get a tip, I'm sure that you would like to do so, but again, you're not expected. So that was, for me, a huge cultural shock, So how then can you tell the person that you're happy with their service? So instead of tipping, you can simply say, thank you very much, right? Arigatou gozaimashita. Or you can say in details, thank you for your service, right? Or something specific that they did it to you. But again, just avoid money, okay? Japan, number three. Chokusetsu okane o watasu. Chokusetsu okane o watasu. So, chokusetsu means directly, right? Okane is money, watasu is to hand in, right? To give. So since we were talking about tipping, this is more like when you were paying for something in Japan, right? Now, if you go to a place and you see this kind of tray, right? Especially this blue one here is very common. So if you see this tray, basically you are expected to put the money into the tray, then the person will collect the money from the tray, and then they will, if you have any change, they will put the change in the tray, and then you collect the change from the tray, okay? From the tray, sorry. So that is how we do it in Japan. Obviously, if you are buying, let's say, a takoyaki, in Osaka from the streets, they're not going to have the tray. So maybe, you know, they will get the money from your hand and they will give you the money, your change. So there are exceptions, but if you go to a department store or, you know, or somewhere, you know, that is fancy, you will probably see the tray right there, right? So the rule of thumb here is basically if there is a tray, please use the tray. And number 4, ご飯にお箸を刺すこと。ご飯にお箸を刺すこと。So this is to put chopsticks upright into the rice, okay? So in Japan, we cannot do this, okay? So, and the reason why, as you can see in this picture here, is that we offer food for the dead, right? We have little altars in the house, and we put usually, you know, oranges or something like osake sometimes. But the chopsticks on the rice, you know, it is something that reminds people of a funeral ceremony, right? It's a funeral procedure. Like if you look at the picture, you can see the incense burning as well, right? So that's something that, again, reminds people of a funeral situation. So that's the reason why it's a taboo in Japan if you leave your chopsticks like that, all right? Other thing that is not recommended to do is to pass your food if you're using chopsticks yourself, another person is doing as well, and let's say you want to give them a dumpling, you know, and you just pass your dumpling and they collect with their dumplings from the chopsticks. That's also a big no-no in Japan because that's also part of the funeral, you know, procedure. As after they cremate the bodies in Japan, they, you know, there's the ceremony where they will pass the bones from family member to family member. So again, this is why when you're using the chopsticks, please don't do this, okay? Japan number 5. So this is 歩きながら飲食する。歩きながら飲食する。So this means to eat and or drink while walking, okay? So this is not a very, I would say, extreme something negative. We do have a word in Japanese that you can see here in red. It's called tabearuki, which means to eat as you walk, right? So if there is a word, it's because it exists, right, in Japan. So there are places that are more, you know, that is acceptable to eat and walk at the same time. However, if you are in, you know, in a busy area, or most of the places, it's not recommended. So you might get some people staring at you if you are doing so. And part of the reason why, I believe, is because Japanese people are always so, you know, worried about their environment, right, and not disturbing others. So imagine if you're walking with your coffee, you know, there are chances that you might bump into someone, spill your coffee on them, or drop your food on the way, you know. So that's part of the reason that it's really kind of not, you know, a good manner to do that in public in Japan. And as you can see here in the pictures, we do have tons of convenience stores. Something that I miss a lot in Japan is the convenience stores and how, you know, practical they are. But that being said, they are everywhere, right? Like the distance between one and the other is not much. And it's common that when you buy something at a convenience store, you actually eat it in front of it. So if you walk into, you know, a convenience store in Japan and you see some people sitting in front of it, eating something or drinking something, is because they rather do that in there than doing as they're walking, okay? And the same applies for vending machines in Japan. So you might buy a drink there and just drink in front of it, you know, instead of walking and drinking. Again, this, when it comes to younger people, it's not really, you know, a big no-no. But if you are dealing with somebody that is older than you, or let's say, you know, your host parents, or your host in Japan is somebody that you want to show respect, it's really recommended not to do, okay? And number 6, 靴を脱ぐのを忘れること。 kutsu wo nugu no o wasureru koto. So this means to forget to take off your shoes, right? So in Japan, the culture is that we do not go indoors with our shoes on, okay? And if you can see here, if you can tell from this picture, actually, every house in Japan has an area that we call genkan, which is like the lobby area, and the floor is actually elevated, is a little steps. So you're supposed to leave your shoes on the, the ground level, and then you step on the level of the house, right? Without your shoes. Now, when you leave your shoes, it's recommended that you leave them this way. So basically they're facing, the outside. It's not very polite if you leave your shoes, all over like on this picture above, okay? And this, everyone, is basically in not only at your house, at a Japanese house in Japan, but when you go, for example, to school, the kids in elementary, junior high, high school, actually, we're not allowed to go to the classroom with our own shoes. So we have to change from our shoes into, suripas, which is slippers, and that's also, something that you will find that sometimes when you go to a hospital or a dentist. And the main reason behind is that because Japanese people do not want to bring germs that are on the streets into their homes, which is actually a great thing, right? And if you think deeper about it, the reason perhaps is because in Japan, we have the habit of sleeping on the floor, right? We have the tummy rooms and we have the futon, which is like a mattress, a foldable mattress, right? So if you think about it, if you were sleeping on the floor, your face is so closer to where you step all the time, you don't really want to be bringing, your dirty shoes indoors. So I believe that's also part of the reason, why we do not wear our shoes indoors. Number 7 is 身体接触、握手をすること. So this means basically physical contact, okay? For instance, shaking hands in Japan, right? Shaking hands nowadays is a little bit more common, especially if you're doing business with a Japanese person and they know that you are a foreigner. Perhaps they will initiate it themselves, to shake hands. But the rule of thumb in Japan is to bow, right? That is how we greet someone in Japanese. We show respect. And, that is just a safer way to go. But talking about Shintai Seishoku, so for example, we have in North America public display of affection, right? So PDAs are relatively a common thing. In Japan, however, you will get some, staring if you are doing that in public. So no kissing, no hugging, okay? For example, in Brazil, where my mom is from, I'm used to have people coming in as they greet each other, they will kiss you. Not only once, but twice, right? But that is something that we don't do in Japan. It's very rare to kiss somebody on the cheek. It's very rare to hug someone. And even again, shaking hands, sometimes you don't know. So my suggestion is if you are doing business with somebody, be ready to bow. And if they offer to, to shake your hand, then go for it. And number 8. 名刺をすぐにしまっておくこと。名刺をすぐにしまっておくこと。So this means to put away a business card in your pocket right away. Okay? Now, this probably it will be a situation more for people that are going to Japan on business, right? But if anybody, even if you're just, a sightseeing in Japan, if anybody gives you a business card, a card that has their name, their information, please don't just have a quick look and put it in your pocket, because that is considered extremely rude in Japan. All right? So what do? You are expected to have a look at it, and stare at it for, almost a minute, I would say. There is no time, how much time you should be, staring at it. But basically, you want to give the impression that you are interested in knowing about the person, right? So basically, all the information that is written in the card, you would be, reading it. Now, if you are sitting somewhere, perhaps, then it's recommended that you leave your business card, that person's business card, on the table somewhere that you could go back and have a look at it, right? Or if you're not, just keep it in your hands for a little bit longer as you're still talking to that person, but just avoid putting it away. All right. Also, a small tip on dealing with this situation of business card in Japan: when you give your business card, when you exchange business card with somebody, if you want to give that person the impression that you are, for example, they are your superior, they are your boss, they are somebody that you really admire, you would offer your business card in a lower level that they would place theirs. So that also symbolizes that you are, more, I wouldn't say inferior, but you are being more humble, and that is something very Japanese. Number 9, masku wo shinai koto. So this is a big don't in Japan, okay? So masku wo shinai koto. Masku is mask, right? So not wearing a mask in Japan when you are sick is considered extremely rude and selfish, I would say, right? So people in Japan, it's funny because with the pandemic, we all kind of learn how to wear masks around the world. However, even before the pandemic, it has always been part of the Japanese culture that you wear a mask, not only, to prevent yourself from getting sick, but because you don't want to spread, right? So, if you are not only sick with a runny nose or something like that, but a lot of people in Japan suffer from hay fever, so that's also a good reason why people are wearing them, because they have a runny nose. Others don't know if they have a runny nose because of hay fever or because they actually have a cold, right? So again, just to show people that actually you are doing your best to not spread any sort of germs, then you wear a mask. So when foreigners don't do that in Japan, and if they actually have a runny nose or they are showing some sort of symptoms, Japanese people will not really be looking at you with, a nice look. So please always carry a little mask with you when you go to Japan. And number 10, chikoku wo suru koto. Chikoku wo suru koto. Now, this is obviously, it's not only in Japan, okay? I consider this being rude in any country. So if you have an appointment with somebody, please be on time, right? However, what I want to tell you here is in Japan, people are always, I would say, at least 5 minutes earlier. Maybe the common sense is to arrive 10 minutes earlier. So if you arrive on time, you already kind of, basically probably going to be the last one arriving. So it's recommended that you always arrive early, okay? But if you do arrive late by any chance, that will be seen as, very negative, as a negative thing, especially if it's with somebody that you're doing some sort of business, or you have a work relationship. So it's something that you definitely want to avoid. Okay, if you are going to be late by any chance, a good thing that you can do is try to contact someone and say, hey, by the way, I'm going to be late. But it's funny because in Japan, people are so worried about this that I don't know if you guys heard about it, but the JR, all the train lines in Japan, when we have some sort of accident, that the trains delay, this people that work in the train stations, if you go and ask them for a document that proves that the train was delayed, they will give you that, right? And that's usually what we bring to school to tell our teachers, to show our, our professors, or to bring at work. So people, go to that, and they literally, guys, they handwrite, like a lot of information. But that's Japan, because it's not acceptable to be late. So, and if you just say, oh, you know, the train was late, people might think that you're lying, right? So that's why also in that case you are expected to bring this paper from, you know, the person at the train station. But anyway, the best thing you can do is try to arrive at least 10 minutes earlier. All right? And all right, that's it for today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share them below. If you have any other thing that you think it is a big don't in Japan, please share with us in the comments. All right? I hope to see you around. それではまた。バイバイ。